Have you ever been in a conversation where, well, the most significant elements weren't actually spoken aloud? Where the real meaning seemed to live not quite in the words, but maybe in the pauses or, the way someone looked at you or even something tiny like how their hand held a cup?
Hmm.
It's a really captivating idea, isn't it? This thought that truly effective communications, especially I think in global leadership, it goes way beyond just the verbal stuff.
Absolutely. It plunges into these deeper, often invisible layers, the unspoken cues, right? That subtle symphony playing underneath.
Exactly. And we're looking into this realm where true connection, that real understanding between people, it's often found not in what's said outright, but in what's, subtly offered.
Like learning to listen with more than just your ears.
Yes, and speaking with more than just your mouth. So today we're embarking on a deep dive into exactly this. Our main source is quite remarkable, actually, a special episode called Beyond Words, The Ancient Diplomacy of Leadership. It's by Ling Ting from Lóng Tíng Voices and Lóng Tíng Enterprises.
A really insightful voice.
Definitely. And our mission today, really, is to peel back these layers, uncover these hidden dimensions of how we connect. We'll cover some fascinating ground, high and low context cultures, the surprisingly powerful diplomacy of just sharing a meal. And the goal is to grasp their critical role in, well, global leadership and maybe most importantly, in building real lasting trust across these divides that often seem so huge.
And what's truly fascinating here right from the get-go is how this material really challenges our basic assumptions about communication. It suggests that, global leadership doesn't kick off with the strategy decks or the mission statements we often think of.
Right, not the usual starting point.
No, instead it argues leadership truly begins in the space between what is said and what is quietly offered. This deep dive, it promises to illuminate these invisible places, these cultural coordinates most people never name. And it reintroduces us to these, well, forgotten forms of diplomacy, things that are actually ancient and, you could argue, way more profound than our modern negotiation tactics. It really forces us to rethink the basics of connection and leadership.
Yeah, it's a powerful opening thought. It really does make you stop and think, doesn't it? How much meaning are we actually missing? In work, with friends, certainly in international stuff, there's this richness we might just be glossing over.
Yeah.
Hashtag tag between silence and speech. The foundations of context. Okay, so let's dive into this idea of the unspoken conversation. The source makes this really key distinction. We all know the conversations that happen out in the open, right?
Right.
Words exchanged directly. We rely on those.
Standard stuff.
But then it talks about the other ones. These conversations that happen almost at the edge of our awareness, like in that tiny pause before someone says your name, or the way a cup touches the table.
So subtle.
Exactly. It's in these moments, the ones we often miss, that the real fabric of connection gets woven, not just in the back and forth of words.
That's a really insightful way to frame it. It sets the stage perfectly for seeing communication, not just as, linear info sharing, but as this deeply multi-layered thing, rich with hidden meaning.
Yeah.
Meaning isn't just in the words. It's often baked into the atmosphere, the environment, and crucially, the shared context. And that's exactly where Edward T. Hall's concept of context comes in. It's vital. And Lóng Tíng's work really brings its relevance for leaders today right to the forefront.
And Hall's idea, this concept of context as the invisible layer beneath our conversations, that's just such a game changer. It's this unseen framework that really dictates how much needs to be spelled out and how much can just be, well, understood or inferred.
Right, based on shared history or knowledge.
And getting that distinction is just paramount when you're trying to navigate different cultural landscapes. Without it, you're kind of flying blind, aren't you?
Yeah, totally blind. So let's dig into the two ends of the spectrum Hall identified. High context and low context cultures. In high context cultures, meaning is carried much more implicitly. It's woven through shared history, relationships, subtle nonverbal cues, a deep assumed understanding.
Right.
The source paints this really vivid picture, takes us to a Kyoto tea room. Imagine that, where words fall like soft rain.
Beautifully, yeah.
Isn't it? In that kind of setting, the real meaning isn't carried by the sentence, it's carried by the bow before it. That bow isn't just politeness, it's deep respect for unspoken tradition, a reliance on shared background.
It's loaded with meaning.
Exactly. The angle of the head, how you place an object, the timing of a glance, these are powerful silent messages. Respect, understanding, emotion. It's like the air itself is thick with shared meaning, so you don't need long explanations. As the source says, you already know the story. Communication there isn't about dumping new facts. It's more about acknowledging, reinforcing, gently building on what's already there. For leaders engaging with that, it means realizing a quiet nod might be huge agreement. Silence could be more respectful than a flood of words.
So patience, observation, really listening to the silence are key.
Absolutely. Way more valuable than just firing off direct questions.
Words fall like soft rain. That phrase just sticks with you. It captures that gentleness, that inference, that almost intuitive knowing. Okay, so let's flip to the other side. Low context cultures.
Right.
Here, meaning is explicit, direct, precise, mostly through the words themselves. Think the source uses the example of a busy New York boardroom.
Yeah, very different vibe.
Totally. In that setting, the sentence is the meaning direct, sharp, efficient, like an arrow aimed at its mark. There's very little room for ambiguity.
No guessing games.
No. Every bit of info, every instruction, every intention, it needs to be spelled out clearly, concisely. The assumption is, if it's important, you say it. You don't expect people to just know or read between the lines.
The expectation is often, tell me the story from the beginning, give me the details.
Exactly. Leave no stone unturned. Everything laid out, defined, articulated. So for a leader there, it means clear directives, agendas, prioritizing clarity and efficiency. You expect direct challenges, explicit agreements.
Precisely. And the absolutely critical point, which the source really hammers home, is that neither way is inherently wrong.
Right. Just different.
Just different, and neither is efficient on its own. They're distinct frameworks for how we build understanding. So if we connect this to global leaders, their huge task isn't picking one or imposing their own way.
No.
The real challenge, the art really, is learning to hear both, developing that incredibly nuanced skill to know when silence means respect, deep understanding, contemplation maybe, and conversely, when that same silence might actually signal a big problem, confusion, or a failure to communicate something vital. That sensitivity is just crucial for preventing misunderstandings and actually getting collaboration to work.
That difference between silence as respect and silence as a problem, that's huge. And it brings up such a critical point for modern teams, right? Especially remote teams working across time zones, different cultures.
Oh, absolutely. The potential for misinterpretation skyrockets.
Think about it. A low-context team lead might see silence from a high-context team member in a brainstorm as, what? Disengagement, lack of understanding.
Yeah, easily.
When really it could be deep thought, or respect for the leader's authority, or just processing things implicitly. Imagine the ideas lost or the quiet resentment that builds up from being misjudged like that.
And it cuts both ways.
Totally. A high-context leader assumes their team gets a subtle hint, but the low-context members miss the critical instruction completely. Projects get delayed, errors happen.
And it's not about bad intentions. It's a fundamental mismatch. Unconscious bias towards your own style creates these massive blind spots, frustration, inefficiency, breakdown of trust.
So it's not enough just to be aware. You need to be contextually, bilingual.
Yeah.
Switching modes, asking those meta questions, adjusting expectations.
Exactly. It takes huge self-awareness and, frankly, a willingness to be uncomfortable, to step outside your usual way of doing things. #tag when contexts collide, the seeds of misunderstanding.
So these inherent differences, these different rhythms, they inevitably lead to this really critical point, the collision, when these styles clash.
Right.
And the source says this is where most misunderstandings begin. What's really sneaky about it is that these clashes usually aren't loud arguments.
No, rarely.
They happen quietly, subtly, almost invisibly. Like the source says, it's not about incompetence or bad intentions. It's simply people speaking different kinds of meaning.
Yeah.
Using different grammars of understanding, even with the same words.
The scaffolding around the words is different.
Exactly. Leading to these profound misinterpretations.
It's a fascinating and often quite sad dynamic because the intent is often good, but the interpretation framework is just completely off. The source gives these fantastic anecdotes that really hit home.
Yeah, they do.
Like the classic one, the German project manager and his Japanese colleague. The German manager, coming from that low-context place direct, needs explicit confirmation, clear answers.
Wants a yes or no.
Right. Asks a straightforward question. Can we meet the deadline? He expects a clear answer or a precise explanation if not. He wants the data.
Okay. And the Japanese colleague, operating from that high-context world, valuing harmony, indirectness, saving face,
Everyone involved, yeah.
replies with that carefully chosen phrase, "We will do our best."
Exactly. And boom, the interpretation clash. That's where the quiet damage starts. The German manager hears, "We will do our best," and thinks, great, commitment, they're on it.
He assumes if there was doubt, they'd say so directly.
Totally. He walks away confident. But for his Japanese colleague, "we will do our best" means something very different, much more nuanced. In that context, it's polite caution. It might even be a subtle warning that the deadline is, frankly, impossible, but saying no directly would be impolite, confrontational.
So the real meaning is inferred. Polite ambiguity.
Right. The German manager completely misses the unspoken, but the silent, it's highly unlikely.
Wow. That's such a clear example.
Yeah.
And so easy to see how the low-context person just reads it completely wrong, assumes yes when caution was meant.
Exactly.
Then there's that other powerful example from the source, the Scandinavian leader and the Middle Eastern partner.
Yes.
The Scandinavian leader, probably valuing directness, transparency, practical feedback, says in a meeting, this plan is unrealistic.
Intending it as constructive honesty. Just frank, objective assessment to fix things. Purely logical problem solving, but for the Middle Eastern partner, potentially from a culture where public criticism is deeply shaming, where honor and face are critical, that direct public statement isn't constructive at all. It feels like a public wound. What was meant as objective feedback lands as a personal insult, diminishing their standing in front of everyone.
Oof.
It shows perfectly how public feedback and saving face play out so differently. Direct criticism, valued as honest and efficient in one place, can be deeply offensive and wreck relationships in another, especially those high-context, honor-driven cultures. The impact isn't on the plan, it's on the relationship.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit disturbing. The source points out that the result of these clashes often isn't that loud conflict.
Right. No big blow-up, usually.
No shouting, no walkouts. More often, and maybe this is worse, it's quieter, more subtle. It's a slow erosion of trust.
Like water on stone.
Exactly. A gradual wearing away of the connection. It's described as a door that closes and no one hears it. The people involved might not even know what happened.
They just feel off, a distance growing.
Yeah, a vague unease, missed connections, things not progressing, but they can't quite put their finger on why. It's not about someone being bad at their job. It's misinterpreting the fundamental language of connection itself.
And if you really start thinking about the long-term consequences of these silent failures, it's pretty sobering. In business, it could be stalled deals that just lose steam, failed partnerships that unravel quietly, projects falling apart for no obvious reason. In diplomacy, strained international relations without a clear trigger, just less cooperation because that underlying trust got subtly damaged.
Even personally, right?
Absolutely. In personal relationships, these little miscommunications pile up, resentment builds, people drift apart, neither quite understanding why that connection frayed. The tragedy is, because it is so subtle, so beyond words, it often goes completely unaddressed.
It doesn't create that immediate crisis that demands attention.
No, just that slow, almost invisible alienation that leaves everyone wondering what went wrong. #, walking with two rhythms, practical humility and leadership.
Okay, so given these huge differences and the real risk of these quiet disasters, what can we actually do? How do leaders navigate this complex world of spoken and unspoken meaning?
Well, the source offers some really practical, actionable steps, and they're all rooted in, I think, a deep sense of humility and a real willingness to learn.
Okay.
It starts with what sounds incredibly simple, but is often the hardest. Watch. Listen.
Not just passively hearing, right?
No, actively observing the whole communication picture, paying close attention to nonverbals, posture shifts, eye contact duration, timing of responses, the overall energy in the room, even those small rituals before a conversation really starts.
Becoming a student of the silent language.
Exactly. It demands real presence, going beyond just waiting for your turn to talk.
And that active listening, that observation, it leads to what the source calls the meta question, which sounds really powerful.
It is. It's a game changer for any leader working across cultures. How is meaning usually shared in your culture?
Simple question, but profound implications.
Totally. Because it immediately shifts the dynamic. You move from assumption and potential judgment to genuine inquiry and learning together.
Instead of assuming your way is the only way.
Right. You're asking them to help you understand their framework for making meaning. It shows incredible humility, a real willingness to learn, and an active effort to bridge that gap instead of just imposing your style.
It signals respect.
Deep respect.
Yeah.
And it opens the door for a truly shared understanding, not just a forced one. It's like you're building the communication bridge together. For example, they might explain, well, here, big decisions often emerge from lots of informal chats, not one big announcement.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. And once you have that insight, or even while you're getting it, the source gives advice on adapting your own style.
Yes, really practical stuff. For those who tend to be direct common in many Western cultures, the advice is try speaking less and let the other person's reaction shape your next sentence.
Ooh, that's hard for some of us. Resisting the urge to fill the silence.
It is. It means consciously creating space for the other person to contribute, to infer, to respond in their own way, in their own time. Being okay with pauses that might feel long to you.
Letting unspoken cues emerge.
And then carefully adjusting what you say next based on those subtle signals. Being truly responsive, not just driving your own agenda. So instead of, we need a decision by Friday on XYZ, maybe it's, we're looking at options for XYZ. What are your initial thoughts? How should we think about the timing? Then wait, let their cues guide you.
Okay. And for the flip side, for those who tend to speak indirectly, valuing harmony and inference.
The guidance there is, try articulating what you would normally leave for the other to infer.
Ah, making the invisible visible.
Exactly. It's a big challenge, stepping out of that implicit comfort zone, consciously verbalizing assumptions, clarifying intentions, explicitly stating what might normally be understood through context.
Which might feel weirdly simplistic to them.
It might, even slightly insulting, perhaps like you're explaining the obvious. But it's a vital, respectful adjustment when talking to a low-context person. It ensures the core message gets through with the needed clarity, meeting them where they are.
So instead of a subtle hint about a problem,
You might need to say directly, I'm concerned about the timeline for Project Beta because we're short on resources in X area. Clear, unambiguous.
now, what's absolutely key here, the source really stresses this. This is not a performance. It's not about faking it, mimicking another style like an actor.
No, it's much deeper. It's described as humility in practice. A genuine desire to understand, to connect on a human level, to show real respect for different ways of being.
It's not just a tactic for a business deal.
Not at all. It's a fundamental mindset shift towards empathy, being okay with vulnerability when things feel unfamiliar, and recognizing your way isn't the only way.
That raises a huge question, doesn't it? How much of our own communication style do we just unconsciously assume is universal?
Exactly. The text highlights that real leadership isn't picking one style or sticking rigidly to your comfort zone. It's about knowing when to let the air speak and when the moment requires the full weight of words.
A dynamic dance.
A complex dynamic dance. Sensitivity to context, people, outcomes, and adapting constantly.
Yeah.
So you have to wonder, how can organizations really foster this? Go beyond just ticking the cultural awareness training box.
Yeah. What does that look like in practice?
Maybe more immersive experiences, mentorship from people who've really navigated this, structured debriefs after international projects, focusing on the communication nuances, not just the results.
Analyzing how things got done or didn't because of communication.
Right. It needs a real commitment to ongoing learning and a willingness to say, I don't understand, please help me, with genuine curiosity. Hashtag the cultural coordinates of leadership beyond language.
Okay, let's broaden this out even more now, beyond just direct versus indirect communication.
Hmm.
The source pushes us to think about something even more fundamental. It says, culture lives in more than language.
It's not just how we talk. It's woven into how we see the world itself. It lives in how we relate to time, to nature, to the human being in front of us. These deep orientations are like invisible maps, guiding how leaders operate, how decisions get made, how trust is built or broken.
Absolutely. These are the critical cultural dimensions, the invisible maps guiding us, often without us even realizing it. The source asks us to consider something really basic about human nature. Do we see people as fundamentally defensive or fundamentally capable of growth?
Wow, that's a big one.
It is. And that core belief shapes everything. If a leader assumes people are defensive, self-interested, need constant watching, their approach to trust will be cautious, maybe guarded. Strict controls, rules, assuming people look for loopholes.
Right.
Versus a leader who genuinely believes in people's capacity for growth, good intentions, contribution. Their approach is empowerment, encouragement, collaboration. Mistakes are learning chances. This shapes negotiations, conflict resolution, how easily you extend trust. Are you starting defensively or looking for shared potential? And then there's time. That can be such a quiet but powerful source of friction, especially globally. Is time a linear deadline or a braided river that moves in spirals of trust?
Such different metaphors, aren't they?
Totally. In many Western low-context places, time is linear, finite, deadlines, schedules, hourly rates. Punctuality is king. Delays equal inefficiency, maybe disrespect, saving time, making deadlines.
Clock is always ticking.
Yeah. But in other cultures, time might feel more circular, fluid. Relationships, building trust, letting a situation ripen might be way more important than sticking to a rigid schedule.
Mm-hmm.
A meeting running long isn't inefficiency. It might be because the conversation hit a crucial point for connection. That braided river image is so good. Progress isn't always a straight line. It weaves together moments, relationships, understanding. Patience is key. Rushing kills it.
Which leads right into the core of decision-making. Do we act because urgency demands it or because the moment has ripened? This isn't just philosophy, it's super practical day to day.
How so?
Well, a leader from an urgency-focused culture pushes hard for a quick decision. That looks decisive, efficient in their world. But to someone from a ripened moment culture, that same push feels impatient, aggressive, maybe disrespectful, rushing a process that needs time for consensus, relationship building, deeper understanding.
So the timing itself sends a message.
Exactly. The source says these dimensions directly shape whether a decision builds trust or quietly fractures it. A decision made too soon might feel premature, disrespectful to tradition or elders. Too late might look indecisive, weak. The skill is reading the situation, when to push, when to let things unfold.
So what does this all really boil down to for a global leader? It means being good not just with words or strategy, but understanding these invisible forces, these cultural currents.
Carrying all of them like invisible maps.
Yeah, ready to use the right one. Sometimes it's a straight line, clear sequence, direct path, maybe in low context, task-focused situations. But other times you have to move in several rhythms at once, long-term vision in one hand, the fragile present in the other.
That implies incredible agility. Holding multiple perspectives, timelines, cultural frames all at once.
Adjusting your pace, your approach, your expectations based on the cultural coordinates you're dealing with. It's this dynamic, empathetic process, constant calibration.
And the art, as the source puts it so well, isn't just having one map, but knowing which map to use and when. That takes more than book smarts. It needs deep cultural empathy, sharp observation, real-time adjustments.
Being tuned into the signals.
Right. Which map fits this interaction right now? And you have to wonder, how does this multi-rhythmic way challenge those traditional, often Western, leadership models? The ones focused on speed, directness, explicit results above all.
It demands a big rethink of what effective leadership even means, moving beyond a single linear model to embrace complexity, ambiguity, the richness of different human ways.
And the benefits seem huge for complex global stuff. Smoother negotiations, stronger partnerships, real innovation from diverse thinking, and crucially, building that deep, lasting trust that goes beyond superficial barriers, right to the core of human connection. #tag the first gesture before the first word, the ancient diplomacy of eating.
And now, we get to this part, this layer of communication that so many of us, well, maybe forget or even dismiss in our super modern digital world. After all the complex theories, the models, the research, something much older is still there. Something deeply universally human, predating written language, formal diplomacy.
It was way back.
Way back. The source points beautifully to things like the first pow, the touch of two hands offering a cup of tea, or even just the way a table is set before anyone opens their mouth. This, it argues, is the first language of connection, what the source calls the diplomacy of eating.
It's ancient, profoundly nonverbal, establishing trust, rapport, and, tragically overlooked or underestimated today.
It's amazing how something so everyday, like sharing a meal, carries such huge diplomatic weight across time and cultures. It speaks to a shared human thing, beyond language or belief.
It really does, and the source gives this incredibly vivid, poignant story that just nails this point. A real negotiation, two founders go to China.
Right, I remember this one.
Months of careful, seemingly successful talks. Everything's looking good. Deal's almost done. The logical, low-context next step. Sign the papers.
Finish the task, get it done. They're probably feeling pretty good, ready to wrap it up.
Exactly. And then the CEO of the Chinese partner company, with politeness, huge cultural significance, offers this simple gesture. We would be honored to invite you to dinner. Seems like just a nice, friendly invitation, maybe not essential.
To some, yeah. It's a social extra.
But here's the collision point, the moment that highlights everything we've been talking about.
Right.
One of the founders, maybe focused on efficiency, the task, the bottom line, leans forward and says directly, almost dismissively, "We're not here to eat, we just want to sign the contract."
Oh, wow. So blunt.
Stark. Blunt. No ambiguity. From his perspective, maybe just conveying focus and efficiency.
Oh, the silence after that. The source describes it so chillingly. It makes this crucial distinction. The room falls silent. Not the kind of silence that invites reflection, but the kind that ends a relationship.
That nuance is everything, not a thoughtful pause. It was the sound of a door slamming shut on the relationship, unheard by the one who slammed it, but deafening to the other side.
An irrevocable break.
Yeah.
Silent, but final.
Precisely. And the devastating result. Immediate. Absolute. The next morning, the deal is gone.
Just like that.
Gone. This deal, built over months, dissolved, not because of the contract details, the numbers, some clause, lost fundamentally because one of the oldest rituals of trust was dismissed.
Wow.
That direct, task-focused reply, maybe efficient in his culture, landed as a massive rejection of hospitality, an insult to respect, a dismissal of the human connection needed for any real agreement. They ditched the human part for the transaction and lost it all.
Okay, let's unpack that. That story is just so powerful. It shows how fast, how completely things unravel when we miss the real meaning of connection, especially around something so basic, so symbolic as sharing a meal.
It wasn't about the food itself.
No, it was the invitation to kinship, trust, being human together, building that foundation before the deal. It's such a stark reminder that even now, these ancient relational parts of diplomacy, these quiet acts of welcome, are still incredibly potent, often decisive. And it really makes you think, how often do similar, maybe less dramatic dismissals happen every day? Rejecting a casual coffee offer, rushing out of a social thing meant to build bonds, are these tiny, unseen erosions of trust quietly closing doors we never even hear shut. Hashtag around the table, global meetings of shared meals.
That's such a critical point, and it echoes across so many cultures. That China story isn't just some odd exception. It powerfully illustrates a universal truth the source highlights brilliantly. Sharing food has deep, varied, often sacred meanings everywhere. Every example the source gives shows that a meal is never just food. It's always symbolic. A ritual that builds relationships, fosters trust, often way better than any fancy negotiation. It's about connection, not just calories.
Let's walk through some of those examples. They're fascinating. In Asia, it says, food is shared, not served. That's not just words, right? It implies reciprocity, equality, mutual respect. The host invites the guest invites the host back, or offers a return invite. It's this graceful dance of deference, invitation, building a bond where no one's just passively receiving. It's about shared experience, mutual investment in harmony.
And then in many parts of Africa, the stakes around shared food are incredibly high. Huge social weight. Refusing offered food isn't just personal preference, it is a rejection of friendship.
Wow, that's strong.
It really underscores how vital hospitality is. Offering food is like offering part of yourself, your community. Turning it down means turning down the welcome, the solidarity. It's a powerful signal, intended or not, of disrespect or non-acceptance. The food is the person offering it, in a way.
And the Middle East example is subtle but potent, too. A cup of coffee poured with the right hand is not a drink. It is a gesture of respect, renewed with each refill.
Yeah, that highlights the continuous nature of respect, the careful pouring, the specific hand used the right hand for honor, auspiciousness, the constant refilling, all nonverbal affirmations of esteem, attention, commitment to the connection. The whole coffee interaction becomes a living testament to the relationship.
Then Europe. For many there, a meal is not an interruption of business, it is the business. That sums it up perfectly, doesn't it?
The deep integration of social and professional. Big decisions get made, relationships cemented, trust built, not just in the boardroom, but around the dining table.
The casual chat, the laughter over food, that can be more crucial than the formal talks.
Absolutely. Formalities relax, authentic connection happens, you understand intentions, values better. The food, the wine, the atmosphere, they're all pathways to the real work of connection, which is the bedrock of lasting business.
And in the Americas, even something casual like to grab a coffee isn't just a break from work, it is the first step of collaboration.
Speaks to that informal start of partnership. Low stakes, low pressure, but effective for rapport building, testing the waters, getting to know someone beyond the title. Sharing a quick drink signals willingness to engage, connect, move subtly towards a shared goal. A micro invitation into your professional world.
Finally, Oceania. There, the shared meal marks the profound moment when strangers become part of the tribe.
Deep communal bonding, ritual inclusion, breaking bread together transcends sustenance. It signifies acceptance into the group, the community, a shared identity, a powerful binding act of belonging. You're no longer outside, you're welcomed in.
So if we connect all these really beautiful, poignant examples, it's clear. Every dish, every gesture at the table, every invitation, it carries this fundamental question, doesn't it? Beyond the transaction, beyond the social chat, are we just exchanging information, or are we ready to become human to one another?
That's the pivot from transactional to relational, from data exchange to the implicit language of shared humanity. And that's exactly why, as the source concludes so powerfully, sometimes the most powerful form of leadership is not spoken at all. It lives in these silent, huge acts of connection. Indeed. It really hammers home that sometimes the oldest act of diplomacy is simply this: to sit down, break bread, and share a meal. This simple, universal act holds layers of meaning we modern leaders miss too often.
It's foundational.
Absolutely. Before any treaty, any title, any vision, human beings offered food as a sign of trust. That's the bedrock. Long before strategy, there was hospitality. Long before dialogue, there was the table. It points right back to the origins of real, lasting leadership. We're social, relational beings. Our deepest agreements often come not from contracts, but from these ancient, quiet acts of connection and vulnerability.
It really does raise a huge question, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
feels like the very core of human connection, and therefore leadership at any level, has always been rooted right here, in these quiet, physical acts of welcoming, sharing, breaking down walls. It's a profound thought. It challenges our reliance on just words or digital messages to build trust. It suggests if we want to lead authentically, build deep, resilient trust globally, we first have to master these fundamental, ancient, human rituals, these unspoken languages of the heart. #tag outro.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your own work, your own life?
Well, I think it means shifting how you see communication, moving from just seeing it as, swapping information verbally to understanding it as this holistic, multi-sensory act of human connection. Recognizing the huge, often unseen power of the unspoken, the deep messages in context, gestures, and maybe most powerfully in shared experiences like a simple meal. It's about becoming truly fluent in that silent, enduring language of trust. And as we wrap up this deep dive, just consider this incredibly powerful final message from the source. Real leadership, it argues, it still begins not with some grand speech, but in silence. With the quiet invitation, "Come eat with me." Because, it says, only those who truly honor this ancient ritual can carry a conversation that is worthy of being called human. So today, wherever you are, whatever you're doing in boardrooms, team meetings, personal life, maybe think about your leadership beginning not just with your words, but with your presence, your intention. Set the table, maybe literally, maybe metaphorically, pour the tea, and let the conversation begin not just in your mouth, but in your heart, in your real willingness to share and connect. What stands out to you about these subtle yet incredibly powerful acts of diplomacy in your own world?